Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos could be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
And I'm Neil Munro.
So today we're joined by a very special guest.
Hey!
We're joined by fellow director of Acorn, Paul Knight. How's it going, Paul?
Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so do you want to, obviously, introduce yourself, mate? Just give the audience a bit of a background on who you are, what you do, and kind of your history within the asbestos industry.
Of course I can. Not got a problem there. So, all started a long time ago for me, asbestos. I came in contact to it as a trainee when I used to work at British Steel in Scunthorpe.
Yeah, Sunny Scunny.
Sunny Scunny, the place to be. Everyone in Scunthorpe at some point in time works at Steelworks.
Yeah.
So
yeah, massive employer up there, wasn't it?
Big employer.
Is it still there?
It's still going,
still
but
going.
Not so much a big employer anymore, to be fair. I got the opportunity as a trainee, so I took a position which did basically emissions monitoring, radiation, asbestos and noise pollution.
Okay, quite a varied role then.
All occupational hygiene stuff.
Yeah, it was all nice stuff to touch on, to be fair. So I really enjoyed that. Unfortunately, it didn't last the decline of the steel industry in the UK. I was kind of sort of last in as a trainee, so first out when it came to the sort of first round of cuts. So that left me looking for another position. So I kind of moved from there into stacking ice cream on a night shift. 3 shifts in total, that one lasted.
Yeah, it weren't for you.
No, it wasn't for me.
Did you get free ice cream?
No, you didn't. You didn't even get to go home.
No, definitely not.
You just got a big suit, you had to zip up and go in a warehouse and pick ice cream, wrap it up, stick it on a pallet truck, and then off it went.
Nice. So you got a bit of a drive to do something a bit different then?
Wanted to do something different, yeah. That weren't particularly my cup of tea. I did a degree in environmental science. That was at the University of Salford. So I kind of had touched on environmental backgrounds and was looking to go into that career. There was a magazine, I think it was called The Environmental Post. I saw a position advertised in there, applied for a job in Northampton. 6 weeks later, got a reply, come down for an interview. So I came down for an interview, got accepted as basically an asbestos trainee.
Trainee for what?
It was for asbestos consultancy.
Okay.
So it was a trainee position to be an asbestos consultant. Started on a pretty meagre salary of $8,500. I did have some perks. I like the idea that I got a calibrated watch.
Free.
I like the fully expensed car. I was put up in a hotel for 6 months fully expensed, which I quite liked.
Yeah,
at that time in my life. Single man, so didn't mind moving from Scunthorpe to Northampton. It was a little bit past the Watford Gap for a northerner. That my father forgave me.
On the asbestos one, back at the degree, did you do much on it as part of your degree?
Not a lot, really. Can't remember actually doing anything to do with asbestos when we did the study.
That's madness, because you'd think that'd fall a big part of it.
No, we didn't really touch on asbestos at all.
Yeah, because there's quite a few people that come into the asbestos industry, consultancy side anyway, with that degree background in environmental science.
Yeah.
I remember when I started, there was quite a few people that started at the same time as me with those degrees.
Yeah, I think the environmental science degree kind of covers all different things. I mean, we did things from going out and hugging trees to counting fish and bugs. Yeah, there's all sorts of different things and topics that we covered. And it was a long time ago, but didn't really have a lot of asbestos content in there. But something I was interested in. I touched on it at Steelworks.
So talk us through the kind of progression from obviously trainee to where you are now.
Well, I remember starting as a trainee, learnt my way up through, I think I did the analytical side first, so it was air monitoring side. Got put on some quite large jobs, just air monitoring, putting out the pumps sort of day in, day out. That was a good learning experience. You could see the removal process. Yeah. Following on from that, it was then the surveying side, then the bulk identification side. So you could do the whole process from going out, doing a survey, identifying the asbestos, coming back to the lab, determining whether it was asbestos or not, if it was, which type, then moving forward to the client, explaining if they needed to do work on that site or leave it as is. Yeah. And then through to any work that was undertaken, you did the analytical side of it and then got it to a point where they were fully managed.
Right, okay. So, yeah, all-encompassing then. What sort of projects in that sort of period of time did you get involved with? What type of projects and stuff like that? You mentioned quite a few biggies. Was it a little bit different to now? Do you know what I mean? The types of projects?
Similar. Back in those days, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
it was kind of the asbestos side of it was becoming more awareness to people.
Yeah.
And with the changes in the regulations, more people were finally having to do something where historically...
Because that's
it'd been
duty
neglect.
to manage.
It was basically, not necessarily neglect, but asbestos was always on a back burner. People realised that they might have issues with it, but it was something that they didn't necessarily consider and were more reactive to. So I think at that time in the industry, it was almost approaching kind of a peak boom era where, yes, you know, you could get into clients and have a large client, multinational sites or large jobs, which were a lot of asbestos removal.
Yeah.
I mean, I've travelled around. I think most of us have who's in the industry. You tend to travel around all over the place. You have to go where the work is. Spent a lot of time in Scotland on some large jobs, doing some more work.
I remember the Scottish job. That was a beast. That was over a year, wasn't it?
Well, I went for some time over there.
What sort of stuff were you working on?
That was spray blue asbestos on a former submarine base.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, that's mad. Like, if you're going to cut your teeth in the Aussie industry, that's a good one to cut your teeth on.
It's a good one to work on, I must admit. And that's where I actually realised that in Scotland, the pubs never close. They never close, which was, again, another eye-opener for me, sort of working my way through the industry. But yeah, that was a big job that I worked on there. There were over 360 operatives on that job at the peak. With enclosures exceeding, I think it was 1 kilometre long for some of the enclosures.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And I can remember it used to take around about 4 to 5 hours to go through all decontamination units to work yourself from one side of the enclosure to the other side of the enclosure where the guys were working.
Really?
So that was, very interesting when we used to go in and sort of have a look around, see how they're getting on. So used to like that.
Yeah, obviously those types of projects probably are still going on, but they're much rarer.
I think far and few between now.
Yeah.
I think most of the mass removal work sort of took place 80s, 90s of that type of material. But again, with the standards obviously varying, because with what we tend to find now, they might have removed it at the time, but obviously they didn't do a good a job as what they could have done or should have done.
So that was kind of up to the fully rounded consultant. And then where did you sort of progress from there then?
So fully rounded, sort of worked my way up with that company, managing sort of contracts through the contracts manager stage, and then got to associate director. And then at that point, when you've done everything, you know everything, you always think it's best. So moved on with another former director to start another company, which was going to do surveying and removal as well.
Okay. So it was predominantly a removal contractor then? So you went over to the dark side.
The idea was to set up sort of a surveying business. However, that didn't really come to fruition with that because there was offers there to do removal works. And I think when you look at things commercially, you get tempted to go, oh, there's more money on the removal side than there is tends to be on the consultancy side. So there was a jump there to say, okay, let's take on board the removal element of it. Let's go belt and braces. Let's apply for a licence. Eventually the business had a 3-year licence. So.
Which is an achievement in itself. I mean, was that something that you were kind of not so keen on then? I sort of get from the tone of your voice there.
Didn't mind it, to be fair. However, managing contractors, it's a different beast. It's a different beast to managing Acorn.
Yeah, they're definitely like, if you look at, our staff at Acorn, consultants, and compared to, it is a different character on the removal side, isn't it?
It's a different ball game.
It's a completely different ball game, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're relying on people who tend in the industry to, if they want, they can move somewhere else and they can get another £5 a day extra. Yes. So you can have a labour force which appears to be sort of 10 or 15 strong, which the next day may well have lost 5 or 6 because they've gone to work somewhere else.
For another tenner.
So there's always an offer somewhere for them to disappear. So you're always wondering, have I got labour? Can I cover the jobs? Is it the right labour? Have the people got the right qualifications? So it's difficult from that side of things. More stressful. Enjoyable. There's more reward. However, there's more stress that goes with it. So.
Yeah. You cut your teeth on that side for a while and then ended up at Acorn.
Yeah.
The dream team were back together.
Dream team were back together. So, yeah. So the three of us all worked together at different points in our careers.
Yeah, we have indeed.
Cool. So, obviously, this is a podcast about asbestos and kind of the nature of this is try and remove the taboo subject around asbestos. Would you agree it is still a taboo subject, and kind of
what's your take on it?
Yeah, what's your take on it, and what did you kind of agree to come on and talk about and share your stories?
Well, I think asbestos, and for me, working with asbestos and obviously different clients and different people, there are still clients which we work for, you know, who don't want us to attend site with the Acorn branding, who still want those, you know, the word asbestos not to be mentioned very loudly. It's a building survey, or, you know, we're just doing an inspection rather than mentioning the word asbestos. So I think generally there is concerns, some of them are high concerns, that people are kind of still keeping it brushed under the carpet a little bit, because, you know, historically they might not have worked to the regulations, and there may well be potential that people have been exposed to asbestos in the workplace.
So you think the taboo-ness comes from people being unsure about their compliance? Or...
I think it's, maybe unsure with their compliance, or they should have done things 10, 15 years ago, which they didn't. Possibly they haven't got the records in place now. They've not got that management system in place to say, yes, we can categorically, you know, hang our hat and say we've not exposed anyone to asbestos. So I still think there is an element of taboo with the subject.
Bit of an ostrich thing, people just sticking their head in the sand with it.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier. If you've always done nothing, sometimes it's easier to do nothing. If no one says anything, then everything's going to be all right. That works until you've got a problem. And then when a problem does arise, all of a sudden people tend to say, well, hang on a minute, we're mentioning the asbestos word. No one's ever said anything. No one's ever done anything. How come we've got to that now when surely that should have been considered maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago? So I think there still is a little bit of education needed out there.
Yeah, it's kind of why we set this podcast up, to try and remove that, educate people, remove the taboo-ness around talking about asbestos.
Get people asking the questions and approaching them, and because, like you say, there's exposures that have happened, still probably happening, and if it doesn't kind of get questioned and people don't speak about it, it's only going to continue.
So that kind of leads us on then to, what's the worst thing you would say you've seen in and around asbestos?
He's sitting there pointing at me.
No, it's not Ian. Over the years, I've seen quite a lot of things that sometimes you think it's not being done right. And that's, you know, licensed contractors, that's consultants. There's all sorts of bits and pieces that...
Is there any sort of standout thing that you think, Jesus?
There's...
The one thing that's the worst thing I've ever seen.
Some of the worst things I've seen is on transit routes from airlocks to the decontamination unit, quantities of asbestos which shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
So the primary decontamination coming through the airlocks has obviously not taken place. It's just been straight through the airlock, straight to the decontamination unit.
As on individuals being stepped, trampled through
straight
buildings.
Straight through buildings.
I remember you telling me a story about handfuls of spray along the transit route.
Yeah.
Like, literally like clumps and clumps of it. And everyone was like, oh, I didn't even know that was there.
Wow.
Yeah. I think everybody knew it was there, but it wasn't something that was raised initially. It was kind of just cleaned up at the end of the day. I've seen it as well on removal projects where we've had timbers removed, which have been removed from the enclosure without the consultant checking those items, stacked up in a room, and lo and behold, you know, they've never been drilled out, they've never had the AIB residues removed from them.
Still got nails in on that.
Yeah, but standard practice, obviously, of that contractor was to do that work. And I've seen that done with pipe work as well, with insulation on it, where it's just been removed, shall we say, without the analyst or the consultant on site knowing, and just placed in another room.
Cut and wrap, not wrap and cut.
Yeah, yeah, that's the best one. And I think probably one of the worst ones, which was at my time at Acorn, was a contractor deciding to remove AIB with a dustpan and brush, and rather than place it in a bag, they thought it would be easier to poke it out through a window and put it on top of a walkway that they assumed that we couldn't see, which, again, goes beyond belief, because that was harder to do that than it would have been just to place it in a bag. So don't really know why that was happening or occurring on site, but strange things that...
Yeah, and believe it or not, that is an example of like a contractor in the last couple of years, which is ridiculous.
Within 3 years.
That, you know, modern day licensed contractors are employing operatives doing that kind of thing.
It was Louis, wasn't it? Our analyst.
Yeah, it was our analyst, Louis Bingham.
I remember you saying there was like a walkway and you could see the kind of the backside of the room. I think the contractor thought, like you said, it was going out to nowhere. It was going out to a roof that our analyst spotted and was like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, why do that? Why even do that?
It is madness.
it's one of the things that does go on in our industry, unfortunately. So you have to be all eyes at all times.
Yeah. So, okay, that's some good examples of worse then. Have you got like a strangest asbestos thing you've seen, or incident, or funny incident that you've seen?
I think one of the strangest things I've ever seen, this was when I was first into the industry, was removal of it was asbestos insulated board panel. It could have been no bigger than 6 inches by 6 inches on a wall.
That's big enough.
Airlocks were attached. It was removed under fully controlled conditions. And literally, as the supervisor did it, he was kind of laid down within the airlocks. His feet were near enough out of one end of the airlocks. And he was obviously just removing the panel at the other end of the airlocks. So I thought that was quite...
the tiniest enclosure.
That was quite funny. It was the tiniest enclosure. And then we had to obviously air test it after that to get a clearance.
The pump was bigger than the enclosure.
Yeah, the pump was bigger. The pump was bigger than the piece of asbestos we've removed. It was kind of like, I don't quite understand this. But yeah, that was probably one of the weirdest things.
Was that an example of overkill, or...?
I think it was a little bit overkill. I don't think, what we call fully controlled conditions was really needed for that, to be fair. But however, that's what the client had advised, I think. So that's what we did. But looking back, that was probably one of the weirdest things that was done, that I've seen done.
So, strangest and worst. So, have you got a best thing that you can describe, or that you've seen or witnessed or been involved with?
Why are you not pointing at me now?
He's pointing at me.
I'm not pointing at anyone.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes in our industry, you have little moments where you see things happening and you're thinking, wow, that's good, that's amazing. And you come across clients and you think, yes, they are at a point where they've not just carried out mass surveys and identification. They're at a point where they're managing, and then they're moving forward, they're developing it. Yeah. They've actually got a handle on what they're doing, and they know what they're doing. They're fully management. And it's occasions like that where you just think, yeah, wow. And that can be from, major industry players all the way through to kind of one-man bands. Yeah. Because on the odd occasion, they're self-employed sometimes, and you think, they know what they're talking about. Yeah. They've had asbestos awareness, and they've had the training, and they know what they're doing, and you think, well, fair play.
Cool. So kind of the premise of our asbestos podcast is kind of in and around asking the question, what does asbestos management mean to you? So what does it mean to you, in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, I think what asbestos management to me means is raising education, raising awareness to prevent exposure to asbestos.
Yeah.
Because if we can do that, then we're going to save a lot of lives. We're going to bring that death toll down each year. So simple, small steps, small educationals, leaflets, HSE campaigns. As long as we keep doing what we're doing, keep raising awareness in the industry, I think eventually, I'm not going to say we're going to get to a point where it's never going to happen, because I think you do get the odd occasion where you do get, uncontrolled disturbance, which you can't control. But it would be nice to obviously get that reduced to as low as we could.
Yeah. And so is there anything that you would change in regards to asbestos management or regulation, or just in the industry? Is there anything that sort of annoys you?
Has anything pissed you off over the years?
You think, why are we doing that? We should be doing this.
Yeah.
I think some of the things, having come into it, and there's been regulation changes, was that the enforcement at an early stage, I don't think it was really pushed at that point. Mm-hmm. I think there could have been more awareness, particularly sort of 2000 to 2008. There was still a lot of businesses and organisations who hadn't identified asbestos.
Yeah, still is today, isn't there?
We come across, several in a month where they haven't even done a survey.
We're still doing brand new surveys of buildings that have never been surveyed before. And people are like, you what? I need to do something with asbestos.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. Like 2002 to 2004...
It was the grace period. Come on, everyone needs to get it sorted.
Actually, 2004, you need to be all singing, all dancing, because we're going to check, and you need to have that shit sorted. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
it petered off. I think there was a rise, and it petered off, and I think that was enforcement not taking place sufficiently, awareness not being raised sufficiently, and it was still not necessarily on everybody's mind that they had to get it done.
I think you're right. The enforcement thing's a big thing for me, because like 2004,
never really gone all out on that.
No. Like 2004, after that, everybody you should have your ducks in a row by then. If you haven't, we're going to come down on you, and that's the problem. It didn't happen at the peak of it being introduced, and it's not really ever happened since.
Yeah, it's like a lot of things. I think there's always a bit of a fuss around new regulations coming in. So take, for example, GDPR. There was a big fuss around that.
Massive issue.
You're never going to be able to send an email again.
Yeah.
You're never going to be able to send a leaflet again because of these contacts and these new laws that are coming in. And here we are, another year, whatever it has been, and everyone is just like, GDPR?
What? Yeah.
Don't even care.
And that's the irony. For me, it felt like there was more around GDPR.
Yeah,
which
exactly
is
that.
about don't give my number out.
Yeah.
Don't share my information versus something that's actually killing people.
Yeah.
And that, it doesn't correlate in my mind.
Yeah. But I think from the HSE's perspective, they've got so much to look at. You need so many more officers to actually bring them on board to regulate not only our industry, but to going out there and actually doing checks on companies and individual companies to see where they are with their management.
Yeah, that's it. The money's not there. There's not enough HC officers on the ground, is there?
To do the proactive work.
And I think looking back as well, a lot of people might have had a survey either done in-house or some of the old Type 1, Type 2, Type 3s that we still come across now, and they still might be basing their information and their risk assessments on that historical information, which we know in some cases they weren't the best surveys in the world. In particular, Type 1s, they weren't the best. So if people are still managing it and sort of maybe putting a plaster on it and saying, well, we've paid, we've had it done, we've got a survey, we've got the information, but they're not really managing that asbestos.
Yeah.
Because they're not moving that forward. They might have had remedial works done, but still, they're probably not fully compliant.
Yeah. So kind of the last sort of question is, what's the one bit of advice you'd give someone about asbestos?
I'd say if you're unsure, have that material checked.
Yeah.
Regardless whether you are in a domestic premises, whether it's your own house, whether it's your place of work, whether it's a friend you know, anybody out there, and it's going to cost sort of, maximum £10, £15. Get a sample of the material, have it identified, find out if it is asbestos or not.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good bit of advice, because if you don't know if it's something as asbestos, well, you can't manage it, you can't do anything about it. That's the basis of everything, isn't it? Of getting the knowledge.
Yep. And I think a lot of the people now, particularly, the younger generation, education-wise, within schools, I don't think asbestos is mentioned in schools through GCSEs, through to A-levels. I mean, I'm no expert on it. I've got nieces who are going through the process at the minute and they don't know anything about asbestos.
Yeah.
So from that side of things, people, particularly who are working in domestic houses, have got the chance that they're going to expose themselves to asbestos and not even know.
Yeah.
Be that just through basic Artex, vinyl tiles, bitumens, cement roof sheets, little things like that, they could be coming into contact with it. Like I say, it's very little money just to identify it.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this podcast, Paul.
Not a problem. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
It's been good. It's nice to get insights from various people. That's why we're interviewing all sorts, and we've got more coming up over the next few. So, thanks a lot, Paul.
No, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Remember, asbestos first, not last.